Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
There's no turning back now.
Let's put on the show.
You're listening to the Station 71 podcast. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-host,
Beth?
Brian?
And we have a very special guest this week to help us talk about our topic.
Dani!
Woo, woo.
Ooh!
So this week we're going to be doing, I guess, more or less like a compared episode. We haven't really talked about Disney World in a couple weeks, which is kind of funny. But we're talking about Disneyland this week. And I guess we're going to do a little bit of comparables to like Walt Disney World, what's different, maybe some like things you must do when you're there, things that like, I don't know. We're winging it. Dani is our Disneyland expert, and Beth has been to Disneyland once, so I think that qualifies you as an expert too, right?
Oh, yeah,
That's how
totally.
these things work.
For one time.
Beth is pretty enough. She can be an expert about anything she wants to be.
Aw. You gotta fake it till you make it.
So I guess I'll turn the floor over more so to Dani. If you want to give us like what you like about Disneyland first, tell us some stuff
Give
about
us a little history of Dani's Disneyland experience.
There you
Okay, so Dani's Disney history actually goes back to 1955 because my grandmother worked at Disneyland opening day.
Aww.
She was a hairdresser on Main Street, and she was one of Walt's hairdressers. So, fun fact, my grandma knew Walt.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he knew her by name, and it was really funny because when I actually went to do the Disney College program back in the day, my grandma, God bless her, wasn't all there, and she was like, "Tell Walt and Lily and I said hi," and I was like, "All right, Grandma, I got you."
Aww.
Oh, that's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah. So, yeah, my family has always loved Disney. My mom's from Southern California, so she grew up doing Disney. And like a lot of American families, that was kind of just our vacation place. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and so to Disneyland, it's only about 6-hour drive if you're not following the speed limit. So, yeah, I've been to Disneyland well over 50 times. I know that park inside out. It is my home park. Like I mentioned, I did do the Disney College program, but I worked in Florida. So I do feel like uniquely situated to kind of talk about the good and bad from both.
Definitely.
West Coast, West Coast.
So, I guess off the jump, what are some things that if I'm going to Disneyland for the first time, I'm going to be familiar with, like in comparison to Walt Disney World? Because I've never been. I've never been to that park.
Yeah, so there are a lot of rides that are similar. However, like the big one I like to bring up first of all is my favorite ride at Disneyland, which is Pirates of the Caribbean. The Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland is like far and above the Pirates of the Caribbean in Walt Disney World, in my opinion. It's longer. It's like, it's just so well done. I love it. But you're gonna find a lot of the rides they do have something kind of comparable, right, to Walt Disney World. However, oddly enough, Disneyland actually has more rides than Magic Kingdom, even though it is smaller. They just really pack them in there. So I would also say, like, the food, there are going to be some staples like Dole Whips that you can obviously get on both coasts. And like,
the churros are better in California, though.
It's true. It is true. Though the pretzels,
I don't know why, but it is.
it's because it's closer to Mexico. You know, there's great churros.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thing to be better.
Yeah.
I think it's just the fact that they don't use Florida water to make them.
That probably does have to do
Actually,
with
yeah,
it.
that's probably
Yeah.
it.
Florida. Oh, I could go on a whole thing about my time with Florida water, but that's not what we're here to do.
Florida
Um,
water is like the antithesis to the New York water that all the pizza joints like to brag about.
I used to buy
I-
powdered Gatorade powder to put in my tap water because Florida water on its own was so terrible.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, it takes a lot to cover that up.
But the other big thing is obviously characters. I think Disneyland has way more characters that you can meet day to day in a smaller, like, area. For example, in Walt Disney World, I feel like if you want to meet all of the princesses, you have to go to all 4 parks to do so. Whereas in Disneyland, I feel like they're a lot better about switching out the princesses and they're all in one park. That's some we can get more into it, but that's some kind of quick little comparisons.
Nice.
Well,
Yeah,
and I
and
think-
just
Go ahead.
going along with the character thing, and I'm sure we'll get to this, it just feels better because it
Mm-hmm.
feels more organic rather
Yep.
than I'm sure they have scheduled I know they have Toontown and stuff where you can go specifically for the purpose of meeting characters, but just to have them walking around and roaming, it feels so much better than I feel like Disney World where it's yeah, maybe you'll see one walk by, but you can't actually talk to them unless you stand in a line, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's as somebody who has been to both parks tons of times, I'm sure you guys can relate. Yeah, the rides are fun, but for me, character interactions are what really make the situation unique and what makes every trip unique because no matter what, you're gonna have a different time with each character every single time you go. And from one of my more recent trips to Disneyland, one of my favorite memories is it was the morning. I was there with a college group and everyone had run off to go do rides and I was I'm just gonna chill on Main Street with my coffee. There's Maurice's cart from Beauty and the Beast, and it sells these really great baked goods. I'm just gonna sit on Main Street and people watch because if you don't know, people watching in Disney, period, is the best thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sitting there chilling, and Bert from Mary Poppins just came up and sat on the bench next to me. Nobody was paying attention to him. He just looked like a Main Street dude. I don't even think most people recognized that he was Bert in that moment. He just sat there and we just chatted for maybe 5 minutes, just sitting there hanging out. And that's just not something that happens at Disney World.
Mm-hmm. A little more
Yeah.
magical.
And I think too, I know that we kind of talked about this a little bit already here, but the idea that they're more free roaming and that I feel Disneyland is the locals park, right? That's the large majority of the people that go there. So you have a lot of people that aren't as interested in I'm only here once, I have to meet all these characters. So you get those more natural and organic interactions. And I think that that's the thing that draws a lot of us there as hyper fixated Disney fans. I don't know, I just think that it's interesting how they've kind of created that dynamic and can still maintain that dynamic because Disney World could never really.
I will say on my most recent trip to Disney, this was about 1.5 years ago, for the first time ever, I truly saw a character get mobbed. And it was Mando and Grogu. Those two got mobbed. I was shocked at how bad the crowds were. I can't say too much because I was part of that mob, but that was the first time in my years of going to Disney I've been oh, this is intense. But he was still a pretty new character when I started, or when I went, so that could have explained it.
Yeah.
It's Grogu, man. The masses attack for Grogu.
Yeah, I would have been part of that crowd as well.
So cute. I didn't even look at Mando. I just spoke exclusively to the Grogu in his bag.
So
great.
Having been to both parks, what's something that I'm trying to give you your chance to talk about your mint julep because I know that that's the thing that you
Oh my
love.
god, yes.
So give me the thing, obviously that, but give me the things that like your must do Disneyland stuff.
All right. My must do Disneyland stuff. I'm going to give you kind of like the rundown of how I do my Disney trips. I do typically rope drop nowadays. I don't stay necessarily till the end. But I think rope dropping at Disneyland is really great because you have so many locals that a lot of people will come later in the day. So whereas in Walt Disney World, it's very much like if you want to stay later because that's when all the kids leave. Here it's kind of the opposite. You want to come earlier because that's when a lot of the locals aren't there. You go in, you go to the left. You start with Indiana Jones. You gotta start with Indy. I know that it's just dinosaur, but with a different skin, but it's still so much better in my opinion. Plus, like, animatronic of Harrison Ford. Like, what else do you want from a ride?
I know it hurts my soul to admit that it is the better ride because I'm so emotionally attached to Dinosaur. But I mean, when I rode Indy, I was just like jaw dropping, like, oh my god, how did they fit all of this in here?
Yeah. No, it feels more intense than most of Dinosaur, in my opinion. But I usually start off with that side of the park because you also get New Orleans Square, which is my favorite part of Disneyland. New Orleans Square is my favorite land. I think it's the best themed. Throughout the day they have, jazz bands out there. Beth, I know that your experience with Facilier in New Orleans Square is like one of your all-time Disney moments.
It is. That was a core memory for sure. I was literally we were walking around and he just came out of a store. Like nobody was with him. He was just walking around. And I was like, wait a minute,
truly
what?
The best. And same, like, I've seen Tiana that way a couple times now. And I love that section of the park so, so much. And that brings us to mint juleps. Now, mint juleps, in case you don't know, in case you are someone who only cares about Walt Disney World, mint juleps are Disney's non-alcoholic version of the same drink, but it doesn't taste anything like the same drink, because when I was 21, I got a mint julep, and I was very shocked that it did not taste like the Disney one. And it's basically Sprite, limeade, and some mint. When I tell you that I could drink 17 of these in a day and have tried, they are the most refreshing thing on like a hot California day. Like, they are I take a picture with them every time, double fisting. I buy no less than 4 at a time. Like,
oh my gosh.
I love mint juleps, and along with mint juleps come the beignets, which is also, I think you can get them at Port Orleans, but and they might be doing them more now with Tiana's opening. I feel like I heard that somewhere. But oh my god, the beignets, and they do like seasonal ones. This is going to turn into an hour of me talking about mint juleps and beignets.
Go for it. If that's your quintessential Disneyland day, go for it.
Yeah, those are just like the 2 snacks that I absolutely have to have every single time in the park. In case you don't know, I am not a Dole Whip fan. I know it's sacrilegious, I'm aware. But I worked at Disney World in the summer and I was custodial, and I have cleaned up so many melted Dole Whips that the idea of them makes me nauseous. So I have to find my snacks in other ways, and the beignets and mint juleps are like my go-to. Every time I go into the park, that's like beeline.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
do we have a special guest on your end that I hear?
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Yes, that is Miss Bean Burrito. Her other parent just walked it back into the house from getting from hanging out with other people and doing non-illegal drugs, and so she's screaming.
Aw, I just was like, I'm hearing a cat and I need to hear more about it. So anyway,
that
sorry,
is
little
Miss Bean
distraction.
Burrito. But yeah, so back into Disneyland, I think, just kind of hitting some other points. The dark rides are really something so special to me because I grew up on them, and most of them have been there since opening day. So Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is my fiance's favorite ride. So we ride that at least once every single time. I, for the most part, love Snow White. I could go into a whole thing about how I feel about its kind of tech update it recently got, but yeah, the dark rides, you can't miss them. They're so cheesy and weird and show a different era of theme parks, and I love them so much.
They're kind of a
The
lost
art,
art in a way.
yeah,
sure.
100%. We've gotten really into watching Defunctland recently, and especially like doing that. Seeing like a lot of these old animatronics and honestly, like for a lot of these, I'm barely calling them animatronics. Like they have one movement. So seeing that versus, Kylo Ren on Rise, I had to get my Kylo mention in. Seeing like the Kylo animatronic on Rise, it's so cool, and that whole section. And I would say the other big thing that I can't miss at Disneyland is, honestly, like, this is gonna sound really cheesy, but like the little shows. Like there is one that takes place in Fantasyland, and they do Beauty and the Beast and Rapunzel. It's like a retelling of them with the characters. Two guys are like kind of doing like, I don't know, like interpretive movements and acting out the story of either Beauty and the Beast or Tangled. And I have seen that show so many times because it's just so cute. And fun fact, if you want to meet Flynn and Rapunzel together, you stay after that show and just wait for everyone to leave. They will eventually come out, and they don't let anybody else back in. So it's a great way to meet Flynn and Rapunzel together. And one time I got to spend like 5 minutes with them just hanging out. And as somebody with a Tangled tattoo, that was very special to me. So there used to be an amazing show called Mickey and the Magic Map that closed with COVID. That was like, if you watch it on YouTube, it's such a good show. And I think because of Disneyland being so close to LA, and so many of these staff members are like trying to become actors and trying to get into that business in general, it really brings like a different kind of feel to these productions, and they're just really great. Our Fantasmic is better than yours, so
That's one thing that I regret not doing, but we were so tired by the time the show, like the nighttime shows were gonna start, because we had literally gotten like, I don't know, 2.5 hours of sleep, because we went the day after we arrived to LA, and we got to LA
yeah.
and we got to LA at like 11 p.m., which was already like 2 in the morning in my head.
Yeah.
And then we didn't go to bed. Like, we stayed up talking with my friend who we were staying with, and we didn't go to bed until super late, and it was just a whole thing. So I definitely got to get back and come see some of the nighttime shows.
Yeah, I think just in general too, because like this is a park for locals. Like this is a park made for people who are visiting over and over again. I feel like Disney puts more money into these shows, because what are you going to put more money into? The one that some people are going to be watching 50 times, or are you going to put money into the one that most people are only going to see one time for maybe the rest of their lives, right? So I feel like, just like, and I want to hear your guys' opinion on this too. Like, do you guys think that the way Disney supports Walt Disney World versus Disneyland is equitable? And like, just from what you've seen online and things, I want to hear your guys' opinion.
Well, I actually, when you started talking about the shows and stuff, that got me thinking a little bit. And I think that's a pretty fair point, that like they cater to different things. So obviously they're going to invest differently. And I think, you were talking about the dark rides and how some of them have been open since opening day. I think Disneyland kind of has that luxury of, there are rides that they can keep around for longer, because, I mean, it's the history of it all. The people that are going there are going to be the locals, the people that want the history behind Disneyland and stuff like that. Like, and obviously the people that are coming there that aren't those people are going for 1 or 2 days. So they're not going to be in the parks. They need to see the latest and greatest and things like that. I think Disney realizes that they can afford to not invest in it as much, and maybe that's to some detriment. But I think at the same time, it's because it's different targets. They can pick and choose, and that's where they kind of end up not spending the money there.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that Disney as a company treats Disneyland and Disney World differently, because I feel like there is, like you guys were kind of mentioning, is like there's a lot more variety as far as like seasonal offerings and stuff, because it's like these people that keep going and going and going, like, yeah, obviously it's a comfort to go and see the same things over and over again. We all love that because it's like, it feels like home away from home. But then you also want to experience something new each time. And when Dani asked the question about like, do I think that, the company treats the parks like on the West Coast and East Coast equitably, the first thing that popped into my head was like Oogie Boogie's Bash or whatever it's called, and how every single year it looks so awesome, and they have like cool stuff that I'm like, I really wish that we could have that, but we're never going to. Like all these cool characters, like really elaborate like set pieces and like actors that come in and portray like Scarlet Witch or Doctor Strange, or face character versions of villains that you never get to see outside of this event. And I just think about stuff like that and how I wish that that was something that we were graced with every once in a while.
Yeah, no. I think for me a huge example is let's look at the parades. Festival of Fantasy. Well, I love Festival of Fantasy. Festival of Fantasy was the parade when I worked there in 2016, and by that point it had already been out for a couple years. Mm-hmm. Versus, like, you see something like Paint the Night, which I was lucky enough to see in person, and it is truly just, like, it is a party of a parade. Like, people are singing, people are doing the choreo, like, in the crowd, like, it is a whole different energy, and it's just so fascinating seeing those differences, because as somebody who's worked on both, or who's worked on one side and then just always been a guest on the other, it's, and that could also be affecting why I love Disneyland so much more, but it's just so fascinating seeing, like, they will put this money into a brand new nighttime show that only lasted a couple years, but they won't put in a new nighttime parade at Magic Kingdom. Rather, they would just pull out, Main Street Electrical every 10 years.
Mm-hmm. I'd even take that at this point.
Honestly.
Like, and I love the electrical parade. I actually saw it when it came to Disneyland because I was like, yes, my parade, it's here. But yeah, it's really fascinating, and I think we're gonna start seeing that too more with the proposed expansion that's looking like it's gonna go in at Disneyland. I don't know how much you guys have been following that. But essentially, Disney is planning on doing a huge expansion. It's been approved by the city of Anaheim. They are working on, like, getting permits right now and things, but it's going to be a huge expansion. We're hearing that we're going to get Avatar Land over here in California. So I'm really curious to see. We obviously haven't had a fifth gate at Walt Disney World, but they're putting in whole new lands in Disneyland. So, especially considering the size constraints, right? Like, Disney World has so much space, and it feels like they're not doing a lot with it. And what they are doing is things like the Halcyon, and we've seen how that's been going in the past few weeks in the media.
Right.
But I'm also really curious because, like, I would love to hear you guys, your guys' thoughts, because I feel like Universal, at least in the Disneyland space, is really coming for Disneyland's neck. Like, Universal with the Mario World being in California, like, I feel like it's really been interesting the last year seeing kind of people who would normally go to Disneyland going over to Universal. So I'm curious to see, like, or hear your guys' thoughts with the Mario Land coming out to the East Coast here soon.
I mean, it's an interesting point. I think that Disneyland probably needs it more, specifically because Walt Disney World is a vacation destination, and I feel like Disneyland is more of an add-on in people's eyes. Like, I don't
Yeah.
ever really like hear people say I'm going specifically out there for Disneyland. It's usually like, oh, I'm going to California and I'm doing Disneyland in that trip. I think, you come to Florida, a
Yeah.
lot of people want to go to Disney World. It's, there are other parks around, obviously. Like you have Universal, you have SeaWorld, you have, all of these parks around it that like you can add on to your Disney trip, but it's not the focus. So I think Disneyland definitely needs it more, especially if Universal is taking a portion of the market from them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I
Yeah,
think.
I think
Go ahead.
I think Disney just doesn't really feel the need to do much expansion on the East Coast right now.
Yeah.
I do think
no.
that when Epic Universe opens, they're going to feel that.
I agree with that, but I also feel like we saw how it happened with Harry Potter, right? Like we got the knee jerk of Avatar, and then they're like, oh, Star Wars. So I feel like when Epic Universe opens, we'll get something on the East Coast. It's probably going to be small, and then they'll probably in 5 years after the fact say this is what we meant to put out too.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that on the East Coast, like, obviously there is competition in Universal and, I don't know, SeaWorld, I guess. I don't really feel like most people see them as really a competitor. And there's obviously a lot of stuff to do in the Orlando area, but I feel like it's not comparable to LA, where it's like an iconic destination where you could spend all day doing things that don't involve a park of any sort.
Yeah.
People want to go to the Hollywood sign, they want to go to the Star Walk or whatever. They want to see these iconic destinations, or maybe even go on one of those cheesy celebrity house tours or whatever. Like, you can do so much, I feel like, in LA that doesn't involve being inside of a theme park, whereas Orlando, obviously you can, but I feel like it would take more planning and effort than most people are willing to do. Like, it's not as iconic of Orlando is not as iconic of a travel destination. Like Mario was saying, Disney World is the travel destination.
Right.
Yeah, no, what's really fascinating too is if you don't know the LA area well, like Anaheim from, let's say, downtown LA with traffic is like an hour and a half. It's not super close to LA. Whereas Universal Studios is kind of in the heart of LA. So I feel like that also, pushes Disney to really, I'm so sorry, Gary. I'm so sorry, everybody. It really pushes Disney to be like, all right, we need to put more in Disneyland because that's going to bring the people down. Whereas, like you said, Mario, Disney World is the tourist destination for Orlando. I mean, we've all listened to Book of Mormon. We all know how much he wanted to go to Disney World.
Well, and the funny thing with that too, I mean, I think we've talked about that a couple times on the show, that like Universal is making a case for themselves to be a vacation destination. So it's at some point Disney is going to have to fight back, but I feel like they've accepted their role in California because there's not much room for them to fight back. Like, obviously they don't have the land that we have on the East Coast, so it's, they're going to maintain it and make it so that the people that want to stop on their trip are going to go there and are going to enjoy themselves. But at the same time, it's not top priority.
Yeah, no, and I think this is a good point to kind of segue into Disney's California Adventure, because we haven't really touched on that park at all.
Was it the part that I said it's not top priority that was the perfect segue?
Just made me think of California Adventure. No, first of all, I love California Adventure and what it's become in the past few years. I love Pixar Pier. You're starting to be able to drink more in Disneyland, which I don't want to go all, Disney adult, but I have feelings about that. But California Adventures, love drinking in. I feel like California Adventure has almost become like the young adult park versus Disneyland, which is really fascinating because like whenever I'm at California Adventures, like I see primarily adults there. And I think it's kind of become the drinking destination for a lot of locals and annual pass holders. They're going to go over to California Adventures for like a Friday night. But the money that I think Disney has put into that park is well spent. Like, I rode Superstar limo back in the day. Like, I've been with California Adventures since the beginning. And seeing what it's become, I'm loving it. I haven't seen San Francisco yet. When I was there last, they were still kind of working on it. But yeah, Beth, I'd love to hear, like, what was did you get a chance to go into California Adventure, or was it just Disneyland? Beth.
Well said.
Yes, actually. Say what? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. You did both. That's awesome.
Okay.
What was your opinion of? First of all, I want to ask. In my brain, California Adventures is Hollywood Studios' sister park. What do you think of that thought process?
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. It had a very similar vibe. So when I went, this was 2018, so none of the Avengers stuff was there, so I definitely want to get back to see that and Pixar Pier was all under renovations because they were switching from one theming to another. So I feel like those two things kind of being out of play. I don't have like a fully informed opinion of it as it is now, obviously, but I agree with you in the sense that it definitely gave Hollywood vibes. I felt like it was kind of cheesy in a good way, but also that's kind of how I felt about Hollywood Studios before it started, I don't know, back in its original glory. It was like cheesy in a good way, like my kind of cheese.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought I was thinking about what you said about how that's like the young adult, and I could definitely see. But it kind of brought up an interesting comparison in my head of like you saying that's where locals are going to go and have a drink on a Friday night, and that in and of itself I feel like is unique from Disney World, because obviously there are people that do that, but I think those people are insane. Like to put in the effort of parking at the parks and walking to the gate and getting into a bar or restaurant and facing all of those crowds at Disney World just does not sound like a fun Friday night, like casual Friday to me. Whereas I could see that for really either of the Disneyland parks if alcohol was more readily available at Disneyland. But because of how much, I don't know, more condensed they are, it doesn't feel as exhausting of an idea to just casually stop by and grab a drink.
Yeah, like being able to just hop on a bus and basically be taken to the entrance is a huge plus. I mean, even when I worked at Walt Disney World, there was a lot of times where I just truly did not want to deal with the ticket and transportation center, like, because it's just such a mess. Whereas in Disneyland, like, you can park and be at the gate in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, like depending on how quick you can get on a bus.
And I mean, we took an Uber when we went because we obviously didn't have a car, and he dropped us off, and it was literally like a sidewalk, and I was like, "What? There's a Waffle House?" Like, and then I'm walking into Disney, like into the gates.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a shock, but I liked it.
Yeah, it's definitely convenient. I mean, I've stayed at hotels where you just walk down the street and you're at the entrance. So that is, nice and not nice depending on as an adult now, it's great, and somebody who has, let's say, left their Disney adult days behind them for the most part. I love being the convenience of Disneyland. It's just so much easier to get around. I mean, if you want to switch parks in the middle of the day, it's a 5-minute walk
A
to the other
breezeway.
gate, maybe. Yeah. You know, I know our downtown Disney is puny compared to Disney Springs, but I love it. A lot of those places have been there since I was a kid. And so, you know, I have great memories of staying at the Grand Californian as a kid, and like the beignet shop underneath, like wafting the smell of beignets up into our room, and like we would get hotel rooms that were like over like the balcony was overviewing downtown Disney. And it was just so fun to, like, at night, just watch the drunk people, like, hang out in downtown Disney. And, like, I've gone to downtown Disney to drink with friends before when I'm in town. So it's just a really interesting culture of how differently the parks are treated. But just in general with California Adventure, if I had to, like, sum up kind of some of the great things, I've done Avengers Campus now twice. It's fun. It's cool. It's cool because it's unique. I did I bought the Lightning Lane for the Spider-Man ride, and, like, I probably wouldn't do that again, but, like, I'm glad I did it. I would say the biggest thing that, honestly, California Adventure has going for it right now is the fact that it's the IP park. You know, Disneyland, obviously, tons of IP, but you still have a lot of those original ideas and original rides. Whereas California Adventure really has become that IP land. It's either Pixar or it's, you know, Avengers. I mean, even off the top of my head, the only original ride I can think of would be like Grizzly River Run and Soarin'. But even then, like, I'm just waiting for the day that they announce Grizzly River Run is becoming a Merida ride. Like, it's just bound to happen. So I think that park struggles a little bit with identity, but it's getting better. Kind of like Hollywood Studios.
Right. Exactly.
They've both got Gary, that is my keyboard. Please don't step on that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, no, odd fact about me, Hollywood Studios is my favorite park because it has all the Star Wars stuff, and that's where I got to meet Kylo Ren for the first time, so obviously it's very special to me, and I want to make it clear that when I say the first time, I did meet him 6 times in one night, and the cast members had to ask me to stop getting in line. So, yeah, fun fact about me, my Disney College program started 2 months after Force Awakens came out. 1 week before I began my program, Kylo Ren started meeting at Disney. Oh boy, did those actors know me. Sorry if anyone who is a child is listening, but those friends of Kylo, yeah, I had a couple friends who hung out with Kylo and Chewie, and they were aware of me. So that's all I'll say about that. Can't go back into the Star Wars section of Disney World anymore, but you know.
That's funny. I'm somehow not surprised.
Yeah, my first day with my Get Into Disney free card from the company, I did go into Hollywood Studios 3 separate times in one day to just keep meeting Kylo Ren and Chewbacca at the time. So,
Gosh.
You know, I will say, Disneyland doesn't have Kylo Ren.
Oh.
What was that? Yeah, they don't.
Not even in Galaxy's Edge?
No. Well, I mean, like, yes, but he's a walk-around character. You don't really, like, meet him. He doesn't have, like, a meet and greet.
Yeah. Do they do the stage show at the Galaxy's Edge over there? Where he comes out?
Yeah. It's, like, it's a copy-paste. I haven't been to the Florida park, but from everything I understand, it's literally a copy-paste. So yeah, I've seen Kylo at Galaxy's Edge, like, standing on things far away, but can't get up and close to him, right? You know, and that's what I really want out of my character experiences, is to get up and close with Kylo Ren. So I will say, Disneyland also doesn't have Tarzan, which if you've ever seen the Tarzan character, they always get the buffest dudes who are genuinely just wearing a loincloth. Like, it's not like other Disney characters where they're like, yeah, we'll give you a little something more to cover up. Like, we understand. Like, it doesn't translate from the cartoon. Nope. Not Tarzan.
Yeah.
I mean, I
That
feel like
tree
that's what
trunk
you
is
gotta
hanging
I
go
have
with,
out.
right?
then.
Yeah. But I'd be curious. So, what are some things that you guys, so Brian and Mario, as people who haven't been to Disneyland yet, what are some things that you see about Disneyland that like intrigue you or that like really make you want to go? Because I'm always curious about, from a Walt Disney World fan perspective, like what's the thing about Disneyland that makes you go like, oh, I really want to visit that park?
I think like Beth nailed a lot of it when she talked about it. It's just like how different the vibe is there. And you know, I know there's might not be as, like if you list everything out, as much stuff to do there as far as like maybe just attractions. But I think that like getting to go to there, kind of get the different feel of being in a park where it's just laid out differently. That they're one thing that I really like, just like looking at pictures and stuff about Disneyland, is that it's kind of like the smaller footprint that they have to work with. I think makes it where they have to be a little more imaginative and inventive with how they use that space. Whereas, at Disney World, a lot of the times it's just like, oh, we want to add something new. Well, we'll just dip into some of this massive acreage we have and just build something else to it. So, like, I've talked a lot, I know, about like how I like how certain parts of Disney World, the theming is very coherent in one area, but I also kind of like the fact that Disneyland has to kind of merge all that together in a different way because of the smaller size.
Yeah, absolutely. Mario, what about you?
I think pretty much nailed it for me too. I think a lot of it outside of that is the history. Like there's stuff there that we clearly don't have. And I don't know. I think that's just interesting. And then the differences of characters and stuff like that, how they interact, I think is
Now, if there was one thing from Disneyland that you guys wish could be brought over to Disney World, what would it be?
Matterhorn bobsleds.
Hell yeah.
No.
Bring it back.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't even
neat.
know where they go, but I just want them somewhere.
The chiropractor bills in Florida are gonna
Literally.
skyrocket.
Yo, when I tell you I got off that ride hobbling like an old woman.
Yeah,
It
I grew up
hurt.
riding the Matterhorn, and like from a little kid, I was like in between my parents' legs on it to now, and like, boy, let me tell you, that thing throws you around. Like, it leaves you ridden hard, wet, and dirty.
Also, not me thinking I'm gonna look cute in all of my Disneyland pictures wearing a dress and then getting down into the bobsled and show everyone in line could see my underwear for sure.
Hey, that sounds like an added perk if you ask me. I would pay for that over a lightning lane.
Oh man.
What about you, Beth? What would like if you could bring over one thing, whether that's an attraction, the character experiences, what would it be?
I mean, I feel like the characters could roam like they do in Disneyland because that logistically would never work at Disney World because of mobbing and social media influencers. So I think, I would also love for us to get the Pirates, the Disneyland version of Pirates. That was truly spectacular.
I know it seems silly, but like the
vibe.
The biggest. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say the vibe. I think is what, if I could transfer anything, it would be the vibe, because I just felt like walking around, like nobody had anywhere to be. Everybody's just like walking at a normal speed, and nobody's running over your feet with their strollers, and people aren't like, I don't know, people just felt different.
Yeah, it's a lot more chill.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think like as the person who has done both the most, I think honestly, I wish y'all could have the dark rides because they are just so good. Like they hold such a special place in my heart. You know, you guys have Peter Pan, obviously, but I believe our Peter Pan is not as updated as your guys' is. I believe ours is
Oh
still.
God.
Like
What?
super old.
You guys get all the fun Q things, and all we get is Peter Pan running through the line and just causing chaos.
Well,
Okay,
that
the
sounds
cute.
fun too.
It is pretty fun. But you know, and then Mr. Toad's Wild Ride should be at every Disney park. That's not just for me, that's for my fiance. You know, we're hoping to go to Tokyo for our honeymoon is our goal, and obviously I've told them we're doing 4 full days at Tokyo Disney, especially with the new Tangled Land opened. But yeah, Mr. Toad's is phenomenal. You go to hell. Like, what other Disney ride do you get to go to hell in? You know?
Yep, that's a unique
Yeah.
one.
Never forget what they took from us.
Though, and this may be controversial, I do like our mansion better than I like your guys's. Both the exterior and interior. Even though your guys's is technically longer and like has more scenes, you guys get the like prince walking on the staircases and such. I still like our mansion better, especially when we get our overlays.
Yes, I would love if we could get the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
That's something else that I want to go back and experience. I,
Unfortunate.
as a huge Haunted Mansion stan, love them both. I don't know if I would say equally. I am a little more biased towards the one that I've ridden more, but but there are interesting differences between the two.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I always loved that we had Hatbox Ghosts, and I know you guys have talked about it. But for me, Hatbox Ghost just goes better in Disneyland than what I've seen for Disney World. And I love the mansion exterior of ours. It just feels so like New Orleans, and it just fits the area so well. Whereas like the section of the park I worked in was Liberty Square, Frontierland, Adventureland. I worked in Magic Kingdom West, is that area is called. And so I like got to go into Haunted Mansion like at night to take out the trash, and like while I love that one, like you get a real elevator in ours, which is super fun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the history of it being like the original mansion and like how it sat empty for years, and you know, it took a long time for them to get it done in there. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like most of our rides we do better, question mark. There's definitely some, like I still prefer Twilight Zone Tower of Terror over Guardians. I think Guardians is super fun and it's a blast, but I like the theming of Tower more. Besides, if I think of anything else, person would jump on this recording and start verbally berating.
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like there's just a different level of detail paid attention to at Disneyland that's just not in Disney World as much.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is that the queues in California need more shade.
Yeah. Oh my god, especially the Small World queue. That one's always the hardest for me. And I effing love our small world. I am a Small World stan in Disney World because it has all the characters in it too, which I think makes it so fun, like trying to find the characters from each country that like, you know, it's a blast. I love our Small World. But I have gotten heat stroke at least on 2 different trips I can think of on the top of my head from that queue. That one and Space Mountain, because if it's Space Mountain's gnarly, if you get the outside queue, it's hot. You're on top of a building. There's a helicopter pad. It's a whole thing.
Mm.
But we do get Space Mountain Star Wars themed, so you win some, you lose
That's
some.
true. Yeah, the best we get is during Not So Scary, they just turn all the lights, the little bit of light off, and then it's even more horrifying.
Oh, so you guys don't get the like Ghost Galaxy out there?
Mm-mm. Not that
Oh,
I've ever heard. The only time I've ever ridden Space Mountain that it was different than normal was, like I said, they just turned all the lights off. Like the little bit of light that they had, turned it off, and I think they played like spooky music. And then
see,
it's just like you extra couldn't see anything.
Yeah, that's so interesting because we get Ghost Galaxy and there are like screens put up in the ride that like as you go by, like the ghost is chasing you and things like that. So it's really, again, it just goes back to these
Fun.
interesting overlays. Like same with even Small World. Like we got the characters from the different countries. For example, like Lilo and Stitch are in the America, like Hawaii kind of area. You know, Peter Pan is in Alice are in the England area. So it's just
Which would be such an easy thing for them to do for us, but they just don't care.
yeah, and that's like what's so fascinating to me is because like that small addition of just adding like characters that I know and love in the style of Mary Blair's Small World is so fun. It's so cool getting to see the characters like done up in that Mary Blair style.
Yeah,
and it would be so
that is
easy
really
to transfer
cute.
over to you guys.
So easy.
Same
But
thing,
you know,
like
I think it all really just goes back to the fact that they have no problem selling tickets. So why would they do anything else?
No, I think I like not to get too deep into like the I want to say like politics of Disney, but I think that's just overall in the company we're seeing that like this is the first time in my life where I've truly looked at Disney and been like, "Oh, you could fail. You may not be number 1 in my lifetime." Because Disney has always been number 1. Like, yeah, Universal and like Six Flags and things like that. They've got their followings and they've got people that ride or die for them, but I feel like in the past, I want to say 5 years from like even right before the pandemic, Disney has just stopped really putting this extra level of detail into things, and it's made such a huge difference to the point where like I made the joke earlier that I'm a recovering Disney adult, but like a lot of that is because as an adult, like I have trouble finding the value in Disney anymore. And I think like it's just getting worse and worse. Like we really, really want to go to Florida, you know, plan to see a bunch of people from, you know, the Station 71 Discord, try and like see as many people as we can. But I'm sure you guys saw the report that came out a week or two ago saying like 50% of families go into debt going to Disney World, and that's not a great thing to have like on the record about your theme park, right? Whereas like you can go to Universal and not spend as much money and still have a really, really great themed experience. So I'm really curious. I think these next few years for Disney are going to be really, really interesting seeing both in Florida and California what they do with these parks, because as we've kind of seen in our Discord today, Tiana's is having a lot of technical difficulties and you're already fighting, unfortunately, a lot of hateful people who already are looking for something wrong with this ride. And then now you're like isolating the people who were rooting for it by not letting them go on the ride because it's broken down. So I don't know. It's just I'm really fascinated to see where Disney's going to go with both parks, because we're hearing about expansions on the West Coast. The East Coast, I feel like we're not hearing anything about right now. And it's going to be a really interesting next couple of years for both parks.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I feel like we've all been saying for years, like if they don't, if something doesn't change, they're gonna feel it eventually. Like I feel like the company has already started losing, like you said, losing favor with diehard fans. Like, people like me and Brian, who were pass holders for years and years, saying like, well, it's just not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, it's like we literally have a Disney podcast and we're saying it's not worth it anymore.
Yep.
Like, that says something.
Absolutely. And like, while I am a recovering Disney adult in my professional and personal life, I am still very on Disney Twitter, and I feel like Disney Twitter is a really good way to keep kind of your finger on the pulse of what's going on, and a lot of people feel the same. Like, a lot of people who are regulars are like, it's too expensive. I used to be able to go to Disneyland and eat for under $150 for the day. I went to Disneyland so much in my early 20s because it was like cool. $75 for the ticket, and then like $50 for food if I plan correctly, right? You used to be able to do Disney like pretty cheaply on the West Coast. And now that's just not the case anymore. Like, even the Good Neighbor hotels, like I usually stay at the Motel 6 down the street and just Uber to the front gate and I'm good. But even that, like, it's gotten to the point where it's so expensive. It's so hard to justify, you know? I can't pay like $8 for a Dole Whip. Even though I would never buy a Dole Whip, but you get my idea.
Right.
So, yeah, I love both parks. I love Disney World for its own reasons. I love Disneyland for its own reasons, but I truly think, like, if Disney doesn't change something soon, like you said, Beth, like, a lot of, especially in California, that's where you're going to start losing the locals. And I think especially with Universal Studios, with the Mario expansion and these different themed opportunities that are just as themed as Disney, if not more so than in some of the sections, like, I think Disney's really going to start struggling. So I'm really curious to see what the future of the company is. I know this isn't where you thought we were taking this today, but here we are.
I mean, I can't tell you how many podcast episodes have ended up in a completely different area than we expected, but that's pretty funny.
If
More of them
anyone
have
ever...
ended up on this exact topic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
One
that's
day
kind of
Bob
the
Iger's gonna
theme.
listen.
It's kind of the theme of the theme of the podcast in recent years has become, wow, they're doing such cool things, but we can't afford to do them.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know?
I feel like it's something's gonna have to break eventually, right? Like,
yeah,
you know, we've seen in the history of the parks, you know, Brian, I'm a huge fan of your history episodes.
Thank you.
We've seen the history of the parks, like, Disney hasn't always been successful, and I think, like, it's actually been rare in Disney's, like, timeline how successful they've been in the past 20 years, right? Like, really since we all kind of started becoming Disney fans, like, in the way that we are today. And I feel like we're about to have another, like, Disney's gonna crash. We're gonna have, you know, something's gonna happen because with Disney Plus and with the parks and the movies not doing as well as they'd like them to be doing, something's gonna have to change because it's clear not only by the parks, but even in the movie space. Like, Disney isn't the ultimate animation studio anymore. Like, you've got Illumination right on their tails. Excuse me. You know, like, a lot of people are coming for Disney's neck right now, and it does not feel like Disney is reacting in any way.
No, that's very true.
To put it simply, it seems as if Disney's in their F around era, and they're going to be in their find out era.
Truly. You know, because, like, if you look at Galaxy's Edge versus, you know, Mario World, I'm sorry, but they're not comparable. And that's from somebody who lives and breathes Star Wars, who, like, saw the Millennium Falcon and, like, broke down in tears for the first time. Like, I am the person that Galaxy's Edge should have been targeting. Like, I am their dream person. Like, no children, double income, wants to buy Star Wars things. Like, I am their dream demographic. And yet, like, they can't even grab me with Galaxy's Edge. Because I'm like, I've been there once. I made a lightsaber. I'm cool. I'm good now. Which,
Yeah,
if
and
y'all
I
ever
think
want to do an episode on purely Galaxy's Edge and my gripes with time locking it, whoo, buddy, we could be here for an hour.
yeah. And I think that in like that specific example is so sad to me because I feel like it had the potential to be so cool. Like me as somebody who, I'm sorry, is not really a big Star Wars fan. I like it. It's fine, but I'm not
You're hot
diehard or
enough, I'll
anything. I
allow
haven't
it.
but I feel like when I heard, stuff about it coming out, um I like listened to the audiobook and like was like, "Oh, this is really cool. This sounds really cool." I hope that they actually like go through with the level of, immersion that they're intending to, and didn't. Like I think they tried and it just isn't the average guest doesn't care about that. And I think that's a big bummer because I feel like if people cared more about the immersion, then they would have kept up with it more.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, the biggest kind of example of that was using the X-Wing drones in the promotional material for the Influencer Night, having, like, X-Wing drones flying over Galaxy's Edge at night, and then we've never seen them again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have friends who worked in that department, like, worked in Galaxy's Edge, or was working with Galaxy's Edge when it was being developed. I had friends who worked as Kylo/Chewie who talked to their managers and kind of knew what was going on, and the things that they were training the cast members for are not what we ended up with. Like I said, if you ever want to talk about Galaxy's Edge and what it could have been, oh my god, we could talk about it for an hour. But it Galaxy's Edge is just a disappointment to me, which sucks as like a hardcore Star Wars fan. Like, the wall I'm sitting in front of is all Star Wars art. Like, my house is Star Wars themed, and they couldn't even like convince me.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well, let's hope that the Tiana preview doesn't go the same for me.
yeah, I'm praying that it's good for you. I'm so excited to hear what your thoughts about Tiana's, because it looks cool in my opinion, but yeah, I'm really curious to see how it comes out in Walt Disney World and how it's all going with that. So I'm really excited to hear your recap on that next month.
Yes, definitely. I'm trying to make my expectations realistic and hoping for no technical difficulties.
Have you watched a ride through or anything, or are you going in blind?
No, I've had to like hide a bunch of videos from my Instagram timeline because it's like, here's my ride through, and I'm like, nope. So I'm trying to go in blind. I saw like some of the promotional stuff where they had like the animatronics in like, the warehouse or whatever. So I'm not going in completely blind, but I don't know what it looks like as I drew. And so I'm saving that for my trip.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts because I've watched the ride through and I have my thoughts on it, but I'm curious to hear yours so we can discuss them in the Discord, which you should all join. If you're listening to this, you should join the Discord and be my best friend.
Yeah, it's a fun spot.
There's your Discord plug.
So I was gonna say, is that our Victoria end episode Discord plug?
It is, yes. I'm here to help, to support.
Well, I'm riding the struggle bus, so I'm gonna ask the question that I know we probably should at this point anyway. Does anybody have any final thoughts or anything you want to ask Dani about Disneyland before I mysteriously disconnect and can never make it back on here?
That sounded so ominous.
Mario doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Mario.
I don't actually exist, but I've
Is
been
the
riding
struggle
the
bus
struggle
in
bus
the
all
room?
week.
Is the struggle bus in the room with us? Blink twice if you need help.
This is an audio medium, so if the listeners can't hear, I have blinked several times.
Well,
no, I think
since
that
nobody
pretty
else
much does it for me anyway. But we certainly
And-
appreciate you coming on and sharing your wealth
Yeah.
of knowledge.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. And we're
And-
going to have you back for that Galaxy's Edge episode. I think that it's been on our list of topics for a while. So
Yeah.
it's appropriate you bring that up. Maybe it'll hold us to actually doing it.
If there's one thing I have, it is thoughts about Star Wars. So,
That is
I'm
for
pretty much
certain.
ready at any given time to talk about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. So, but thank you guys so much for having me on. I love each of you individually. I obviously have known you guys forever at this point, and it's always a blast to get to hear your beautiful voices, especially Beth's.
Yeah.
I really only came on here to hit on Beth.
I
Oh,
promise
yes.
next time I will be more attentive, Danny. I promise that we can discuss.
You
Star
promise I
Wars
won't
and
have to
whatnot.
send my fiance after you?
Yeah, it's. I promise. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you for giving us this insight. I know Disneyland is on my bucket list, as depressing as that sounds. And I'm sure
We'll get you out here.
similarly for Brian.
We need to have like a, whenever you plan to come out to this side of the country, we'll meet you somewhere, because we're talking about going to New York right now because Tall's best friend lives there, and on like number one on our list is like harass Mario. So
Yeah, I mean that's like 3 hours away from me, but I'll make the trip. Don't you worry.
Listen. I'm scared
He
of
wants
having
to be
you and my
harassed.
fiance in the same room. So bring Andy so I have some sort of support network.
Yeah, you mean you didn't realize how similar we were until we started being best friends?
I am Mario, the amount of times you come up as a topic in my household.
The fact that we've bonded over baseball. That was like the big thing. And now we talk every day about baseball because it's baseball season. But anyway, we're way off topic now. Yeah, I'll let you go. I mean,
join the
Lord, let
Discord
me
and you
go.
could have lifelong friendships like this.
Yeah,
That's a great
right,
plug
guys.
for it.
that is a great plug. I'm going to jump off because I'm like 3 seconds from falling asleep and my AirPods are probably going to die. So feel free to
All right,
discuss.
good night, Mario.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
All right, the rest of you, I'm gonna go spend time with my cats and fiance, and finish my alcohol. So it's been lovely chatting with you, Beth. I love you so much, Brian.
I
You're
love
great
you.
too.
Thank you,
I'm so glad that
Danny.
you came on.
Anytime, literally, let me know and I will make it work. I love getting to chat with you guys. So have a great night, everyone.
Yes, you too. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.